Hello students, I am Dr. Saleha Jamal, Faculty Department of Geography from Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. And here I am with the course Climate Change, Vulnerability and Adaptation. And today's topic of discussion is Role of India in Mitigating Climate Change. We have discussed various strategies and framework which are working for climate action, that is international bodies and even the role of different nations who are working to have some climate actions in order to mitigate climate change. Let us discuss what is the role of India in mitigating climate. First of all, it is very much important to know that what climate change impacts India is facing. If we see the impact of climate change in India, we can analyze that India's economy, society, the overall natural environment are impacted more frequently and severely by the climate change. For example, you can take the shift of monsoon season from last few years, which is very much visible effect of climate change. The intensity and frequency of heat wave, which have increased a lot, the frequency of floods, even the depletion of groundwater supplies. These are few of the examples that India is facing currently and is dealing with how to manage these all problems. If we analyze some of the data, for example here of April 26, 2022, 15 Indian states were dealing with the effects of the heat waves on agriculture, health and water supplies. It means that India is facing severe climate impacts if we analyze its impacts in different sectors, whether it may be economy, agriculture or anything else, maybe in urban areas, etc. Data also says that the India has lost 26.3 billion due to floods, with damages even surpassing almost 0.5% of its GDP. Various studies highlight that the catastrophic economic and social implications of climate-related losses in India, which might even amount to 35 trillion US dollar over the next 50 years. This is just the predictions. We can say how much loss may rise with the coming year with the consistently ongoing climate change. And we know that India is already dealing with the negative health effects of even lower air pollution. Right now, I am recording this lecture in the month of November in northern India, and we are facing a lots of problem of high AQI air quality index. That is all somewhat we can say direct or indirect impacts of climate change. These are few of the clips which I have taken in order to show you in what way India is impacted by the climate change. You will notice here that a lot of groundwater depletion have taken place. Some of the reasons may be the long prevailing periods of drought, erratic rainfall in different areas. You can see even the 20% to 20% and even we can say 30%, 40%. These are the few of the data where water cut is imposed when water stock even dipped below 28% compared to the previous year. This is the data I am talking about 2015. Even you can analyze the stock of water in the city in November 14. Just you can analyze 76%, 92% and 90%. And state of affair, if you will analyze, you can see 10% water cut, 15% water supply cut. So these are the few of the problems that India is dealing with due to the climate change. Even there are more dry days in some places and more heavier rainfall in some places. Means erratic weather pattern due to the climate change have been observed in different parts of India. There are several news which highlights the death regarding the severe heat waves, and the frequency and intensity of heat waves are also increasing with every passing by year. These are all some of the impacts of India which is facing due to the climate change. Now let us talk about how India is addressing climate change. If we see that we have taken lot of steps, we have framed out some policies, we have framed out some objectives and goals in order to combat climate change. For example, we are practicing for protecting regional glaciers, greening the railway system, cutting back on single use of plastic means reusing, renewing it, then creating cleaner cooking fuel are all part of India's domestic climate and environmental action agenda which the India and the people of India are trying to follow. India has successfully separated its economic growth from its emissions and plans to achieve net zero by 2070. In contrast to other major global economies, India has a strong record of low emission if we compared it from the other developing countries and the developed countries. Per capita low emission has been recorded according to the report of 2022 IPCC assessment. In order to attain net zero by 2070, which will be possible either by reducing the emissions or either by taking some steps to remove out the emissions, India has streamlined its NDC's nationally determined contribution goals for the Paris Agreement into a set of enhanced targets. Here I would like to focus when we talk about NDCs, actually this nationally determined contribution concept came during the Paris Agreement, because in Kyoto Protocol of 1947, according to this summit, it was having a binding target for only for the developed nations. Means developed nation, as they are the major polluters of the atmosphere, so they should take major responsibility to cut down the greenhouse gas emissions, in which binding targets were set that how much emissions they are allowed to emit. But in Paris Agreement of 2015, there was not such binding targets for the developed nations, but it was an inclusive concept where each and every nations have to voluntarily design some goals and objectives in order to reduce the emissions, which is known as nationally determined contribution NDCs. So India has already streamlined its NDCs goal for Paris Agreement into a set of enhanced targets. India's current nationally determined contribution was already submitted in 2022, and it aims to achieve 50% of installed electric power capacity from non-fossil fuel energy sources. If we are going to shift 50% of electric power capacity from non-fossil fuel energy fuels, we can cut a lot of emissions, because these non-fossil fuels are generally derived from the solar power, solar energy, hydropower, or we can say wind energy, etc., which has a less emission and are more environment friendly. India's policy has not yet although incorporated a just transition strategy to phase out the coal, which would seek to address regional inequities and manage the job losses in an inclusive and equitable manner. If I would talk here that another most important steps from India's side towards creating an official policy framework in order to transition a shift from the fossil fuels to fossil fuels, that is its participation is in G7 summit, that is Just Transition Energy Partnership. That was also the major step of India to mitigate climatic changes. By knowing all these little steps which India is taking to combat the climate change, let us talk about some formulated policies, some legal frameworks on which India is working in order to tackle the ongoing climate change. The initiatives which is generally taken by the central government. The first most important initiative here I would like to notice for you, that is the International Solar Alliance, ISA. You must be thinking, what is ISA? Actually, ISA is a International Solar Alliance it is a solar power development, and it is the word here solar comes. So just remember by this word solar, it is a solar power development, and the project started in 2015. The start date of the project is 2015 with the partnership of France here, but it was inaugurated by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi sir in 2018. The main aim of this solar power development is to lessen the reliance on non-renewable energy sources, particularly the fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are regarded as the major contributor of greenhouse gas emission. And mainly this alliance was introduced between the nations which were having the abundant solar energy. So the association is also known as sunshine countries, means countries having abundant of solar energy. So that's why it is known as the International Solar Alliance, ISA. If we talk about India, the region which is most suitable for solar power development, that is the hottest part of India, like Rajasthan, well, northwestern part of India, where many times the temperature frequently rise to 48 degree Celsius, making that area very much suitable for India's largest solar farms. You can see here in this picture, that is the Bhadla Solar Park of Jodhpur district, Rajasthan, India. How large it is, you can just imagine, because in this is we can say the western part of India, the regarded as the one of the hottest part of India, having abundant of solar energy which can be utilized for generating solar power, that is shift from the fossil fuels to the fossil fuel form of energy. Another important step that was taken by the central government is Project One Sun, One World, One Grid, means OSOWOG, many times known as OSOWOG, One Sun, One World and One Grid. Actually, Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi originally proposed the concept of One Sun, One World and One Grid, known as OSOWOG. This is the initiative that was announced during the inaugural meeting of International Solar Alliance in 2018, that is ISA, which we were previously talking about. This program of OSOWOG is to generally focuses on sharing the infrastructure that transfers solar power to about 140 countries, means 140 countries will come together and will share the infrastructure for transferring solar power. A huge project, we can say. Actually, the OSOWOG initiative was jointly launched by the United Kingdom, ISA, and the World Bank Group. So these are the major collaborators of this project of One Sun, One World, One Grid, a very good concept for shifting towards the environment friendly, cleaner energy as compared to the fossil fuels. Students, you must be thinking, when here I am talking about the Mission Swachh Bharat, how this mission may have worked to change the climate, is very much important in order to mitigate the climate. Actually, through this mission, improvement in waste management practices can take place, and when the waste is properly managed, then there will be the reduction of greenhouse gases. So this is the mechanism behind this Mission Swachh Bharat, that Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi has also taken a very historic step with the Swachh Bharat mission. The program is particularly focused for providing sanitary facilities for each and every family, cleaned India's road, streets and infrastructure, and if we talk about almost 4,041 statutory towns. All Indian villages, districts, gram panchayats were declared themselves open defecation free. That was a major problem that was prevailing few decades, a decade I can say before, when most of the villages in India were suffering from open defecation. But now they have announced from 2019 that they are open defecation free on the 150th anniversary of the birth of Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation. If we see the data, more than 100 million of toilets were constructed in rural India. So thanks to the this project, means we have improved the waste management through Mission Swachh Bharat and thus reduced the greenhouse gas emission. This is how the Mission Swachh Bharat is also a major step towards the management of climate change. Talking about very much important Glasgow summit. When we talk about the Glasgow summit, that is COP26, the Prime Minister of India here enumerated 5 pledges which India has made in order to fight against the climate change. So the most important thing here to see what India has enumerated in its 5 pledges. This was enumerated and was addressed while our Prime Minister was speaking to the world leaders at the United Nations COP26. When I talk about COP26, it means Conference of Parties, and Conference of Parties is actually these are the annual meetings every year which used to help to design, to evaluate some climate action at international level, and it is started and is a part of UNFCCC. So this Conference of Parties took place in Glasgow, and as it is 26th Conference of Parties, that's why it is known as COP26. So here the pledges mainly highlights that by 2070, India will reach to its goal of net zero emission. Net zero emission means either whatever emission that is emitted, that is to be sequestered by some strategies, by some mechanism, maybe through the afforestation, reforestation, maintaining the marine ecosystem, the aquatic ecosystem, or removing the this emission from the atmosphere, maybe through the carbon capture storage technologies. So India is expected to reduce its estimated carbon emission by 1 billion tons by 2030. A very good step and a very good, we can say, goal that we have set. And how this estimated carbon emission will be reduced up to 1 billion by 2020 by obtaining its half of its energy needs from the renewable sources, maybe solar, wind, we can say hydropower, etc. And it was said that by the end of 2030, India plans to increase non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt, which is a huge amount. If such a goal is achieved at the right time, a great reduction in the greenhouse gas emission from India's side will be noticed further in the future. Another important step which India is taking to mitigate climate is climate tech and Indian startups. Actually, when we talk about the climate tech, it is a sort of solutions which highlights developing new and realistic method to tackle climate change. Means it should be very much advanced. It should be full of newer advanced technology where we can develop some methods to tackle the climate change, just like we have developed the carbon capture storage method. It is also a very much new advanced technology. So climate tech is actually a solution or developing some of the newer methods to tackle climate change. Climate tech compromises discovering certain methods, strategies to cut down greenhouse gas emission and to give environment some friendly, clean alternative through the existing technologies. For example, alternative of fossil fuels, maybe from the solar power, wind power, hydropower, etc. So regarding how comprehensive the overall growth has been, startups in India have almost spread across 56 industries, mainly at the top 5 being in the IT services, healthcare, life science, professional and commercial services, education, agriculture. Means already the startups have started almost in 56 industries. If you see here, almost all the sectors have came forward here, whether we are talking about IT sector, commercial sector, agriculture sector, etc. And this is according to the economic survey of 2021-22. Means India has already started its climate tech and Indian startups, which is a very good thing. Let us analyze the present situation of India. Actually, India's 5 nectar gradients, which we talked about in COP26, also known as Panch Amrit, the 5 pledges that India announced in Conference of Parties 26 in Glasgow. Let us see here in detail. It announced the first foremost important thing is by 2030, non-fossil energy capacity should reach 500 gigawatt. Means there will be major reduction in the greenhouse gases. Even by 2030, 50% of India's energy needs should be met by the renewable sources. Means renewable sources, solar power, hydropower, etc. Means 50% of our energy need will come from the renewable sources, that is more cleaner fuel, more environmental friendly energy, we can say. Again, it is also announced that till 2030, the greenhouse gas or carbon emission is estimated to cut by 1 billion ton. If we will achieve this task, this goal, that will be the great achievement for the India towards the mitigation of climate change. Even it also talked about to lower the economy's carbon intensity by 45% compared to the 2005 levels up to 2030. Not only this, in a long run, India also pledges by 2070, it will reach the goal of net zero emission, which is a great step of India towards the mitigation of climate change. Let us see how is climate action is funded in India, because we know the climate action will require a huge amount of fund. For example, a shift off from the fossil fuels to renewable form of energy, the whole installation of plant, the working of the plants, the transfer of technology, this will all need a huge assistance. Similarly, the different strategies which has to be started, some we can say startups in India, that all will require fund. So how actually this climate action is being funded by India? One thing you remember, student, the domestic green financing sources have largely financed India's effort to adapt to mitigate the effects of climate change. So this is one of the body, domestic green financing, which have largely financed India. Not only this, if we talk inside India, the private sectors in India, they have been very much instrumental in funding climate finance for mitigating with the climate. So these private sector, they came forward in bringing down the cost of both established technologies, such as we can say photovoltaic technology panel, and newer technologies for clean energy and transportation. India also pledges to build green hydrogen value chains and its industrial uses in particularly in high emitting industries like cement industry, steel industry. Here, the leadership group for industry transition will collaborate with India for the funding purpose. So these are few of the, we can say, like domestic green financing, the private sectors of India, the leadership group for industry transition, which are working together with India to mitigate with the climate change. Even through the partnership of European Investment Bank, the government is assisting small and medium-sized business in their sustainable transition. To reduce India's energy consumption and encourage sustainable technology, the 2022 Energy Conservation Bill Amendment Bill initiates the development of domestic carbon trading market. I have already talked about the carbon trading, so you will hear it in my further lecture, upcoming lectures. So according to the India data, we can analyze that 4.5 trillion US dollar will be needed till 2040 to guarantee that sustainability and intergenerational equality are upheld in tandem with the nation's growth and poverty eradication goals. Means the amount is needed here is 4.5 trillion US dollar. What part does India play in global diplomacy? Let us see this topic also, as it is very much related, how the India is taking part at international level to deal with the climate change. We have seen and also talked about that India has pledged in COP26 Conference of Parties 26 in Glasgow in 2021, which mirrored the Paris Agreement and aims to keep warming well below 2 degrees. Means India has ratified itself to achieve this goal, and India will significantly also impact 100 billion US dollar commitment, which is actually the climate finance, and that the developed country has to raise in order to help the developing countries to establish their strategies, and they should also come forward to mitigate climate change. So India is going to significantly impact this 100 billion US dollar commitment, the climate funding by the wealthier countries which have promised for the developing nation. How it is going to operationalize, the India will also impact this operationalization, okay, how the mobilization of this fund is going to happen. In June 30, 2008, the National Action Plan on Climate Change, which we call it NAPCC, was also formally introduced to tackle with the ongoing climate change by India, which is also a very important step towards the mitigation strategy. So here you can see 8 main national missions of NAPCC, like National Solar Mission, National Mission for Enhanced Energy, National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, National Water Mission, mainly the Sustaining Himalayan Ecosystem Mission, National Mission for Green India, National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for the Climate Change. So these are the 8 main, we can say, national missions which were devised and incorporated in NAPCC. So these are the major steps, we can say, which India has taken to tackle the climate change. So that's all for today's lecture, students. Have a nice day. Thank you.